Hi, I'm Stephen Feinberg, Executive Director of the Rhode Island Film and Television Office. Our guest tonight is a decades-long friend of mine who grew up in Little Rhode Island and became a heralded institution in the music industry. He's represented such icons as Sting, Sheryl Crow, and Miley Cyrus. He is currently the Senior Vice President of Promotions for the Disney Music Group. I am honored to welcome Scot Finck to Double Feature. Hello, my friend.
By the way, literally, I should be just this outpouring, but this is so overwhelming to me, as you know, because we started as two ingrates in the back of the line at a University of Rhode Island orientation, and that didn't go well. So who knows how this is going to go?
That was over 40 years ago. We've known each other.
Full head of hair ago, as I like to know.
Right, we had a lot of hair. It was 40 years ago, and I think we just bonded while talking about Mel Brooks' Blazing Saddles, and you were talking about the music industry, and I was talking about the movie business, and now I went out to California, you went out to California. I lived in LA for 22 years. You're there now, and I'm back home. But a brother for life. How's everything? Where are you right now? Tell me where you are right now.
26th floor, overlooking, and this is somewhat fascinating, overlooking the newly developed Warner Brothers studio set, which is absolutely amazing. It was originally where the Partridge Family house was, the Bewitched house was, where the Friends fountain was. Sadly, they raised it, but hey, this is Hollywood. And now there's a bunch of sound stages going up that'll be, the next 100 years.
So this was basically near the town square, right? Is that near the town square on the lot?
So good. Here in the hub of Burbank, California.
Right, okay. And there was a beautiful big tree in the middle too, not too far from those homes. And was Leave It to Beaver also there? I think that
Leave It to Beaver there. Yeah.
Wow.
It went back to the 40s.
Yeah.
And that history raised, which again, heartbreaking, but welcome to Hollywood. But it's amazing because we spent our whole lives hearing live from Burbank, California. Here I be.
Here you are,
sitting right behind me.
Well, that's awesome. Let me ask you something, Scotty. So you've been in the music industry for about 40 years or so. What are you doing right now? Tell us what project you're working on right now.
I now head of promotion for the Disney Music Group, and have been here coming up on 26 years this Saturday. Not a joke. How crazy is that?
Congratulations.
Full head of hair ago. But there's a number of roles to the position now. One of the things I'm loving the most is overseeing our Disney Hits channel on Sirius XM.
Okay.
So the crazy thing is that I've spent a career promoting radio. Now I'm running radio.
Wow.
And the fun of it has been inviting guests, not only from the Disney history, but celebrities across the board. And we often invite them on to pick their 4 favorite Disney hits. Steve, I just realized you're going to be repaying this guest favor here very soon.
Okay.
Start thinking of them. I need 4 big ones.
Okay.
And it's called Be Our Guest for the Day on Disney Hits Sirius XM. And this has been absolutely a labor of love. As I said, it's just an amazing thing that I've promoted radio for so long. Now I'm running a radio station. But in addition to that, we still have a full service label that has artists across the spectrum from pop to alternative, and obviously including some amazing soundtracks. Yep. Like Encanto recently, and it's full Disney.
Now, Scott, I'm a big fan and collector of film scores, etc. So the new Planet of the Apes score is a 20th Century Studios film now owned by Disney. Do you guys put out soundtracks? I know they're always digital, but are you guys also doing the the physical CDs anymore?
We do. That's actually a great question because believe it or not, even though the industry has gone one way, filmmakers love that palpable thing in
Physically, right.
hand. So sure, for sure.
And does that come under your purview or not?
It's one of the things. Yeah. As I said, I'm changing hats
Yep.
throughout the day, and that we do soundtracks. We obviously have an entire slate of artists. And then, as I said, and I've got a radio station sitting right over here.
Wow. And who are some of the guests that you've had on your radio show?
Well, most recently, most thrillingly, Sir Elton John.
Wow.
Just prior to that, Sir Tim Rice, who at the start of our interview admitted that he wasn't wearing pants on our Zoom. So you can imagine how that all went. I told Elton that. He got a good laugh. He's like, that would be him. But yeah, it's everyone from, as you would imagine, many Disney-involved celebrities, yeah. Lin-Manuel Miranda, and including then general celebrities. John Stamos, big Disney fan.
Right.
Had a blast.
Wow. Have you had Dick Van Dyke on?
You know the amazing? We haven't. There's two people that are on that list for me. Dick Van Dyke. He is much, much older now.
He's like almost 100.
Speak. And Richard Sherman, half of the Sherman Brothers writing team, who sadly at this time of his life has almost lost all of his voice.
Oh.
So two people that I wish we had begun our venture sooner and wish I had the chance to get to them sooner. At some point, I am in touch with Julie Andrews, and so she's next up.
Great. My friend David Permit did that documentary on the Sherman Brothers, which was outstanding.
Called The Boys.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that was wonderful.
Yeah, it's an amazing, amazing story. And when you realize the depth of what one of the brothers had gone through during the war, only to come home and write It's a Small World, it's wondrous.
Wow. So let me ask you this. You grew up in Rhode Island, obviously. Did you always know that you wanted to get involved in the music industry?
Fair, great question. My mom would relay to me that she was in graduate school at URI. And she would, in very different time then, she would leave me to go to class in the hands of many a faithful, but she would leave me with a bunch of quarters, or would leave them with a bunch of quarters. And the story she told me forever is that I would dance for hours, entertaining everybody in the commissary there by the jukebox. That's the first story I knew. And then I instantly jumped to the notion of Mom and I driving all over the state of Rhode Island and listening to the radio. And we sang every song. So music has been my air as long as I can remember. And yes, and then we fatefully meet at orientation at URI. And you said, "Hi, I'm Steve Feinberg, film major. Hi, I'm Scot Finck, going to be in the music one day."
And let me ask you something. Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do in the music industry?
With this face, certainly knew it was going to be behind the camera.
No.
You know, the funny thing is as I got older, I would faintly hear of things called record labels, and they had outposts somewhere mysteriously throughout New England. Could never find them until the day that I walked into the restaurant I was working at following 4 years of a journalism degree, basically to say, "Hi, would you like fries with that?" Mm-hmm. And the bartender said, "Hey, you should go ask your friend Dave what he's doing. He's just got an amazing job." So Dave was the sous chef. Through the kitchen I go. "Dave, you got to tell me what's up." And the first thing Dave said to me was, "Oh, this is crazy. I just got this job. You know what? This is really your job."
Wow.
Shortly thereafter, after Dave introducing me to the people behind North Star Records, that was founded in downtown Providence, I got the job and he departed, which has broken my heart, but he swears he wanted nobody else in that role. And from there.
What kind of music did North Star do?
Fascinating. Two amazing guys at the time that had no connection to the music business, except they were entrepreneurial.
Yep.
And so a guy named Richard Waterman, who literally is our beginnings, and Bruce Folk. Richard was our president. Richard was the money, and Richard was the dreamer. Bruce Folk was an independent artist, absolutely astounding. Look him up to this day. And they signed everything from a concert violinist to a folk artist that to this day is one of the greatest writers and singers I've ever known, Sheryl Wheeler. I'm sure many will know her still, still performs throughout New England and frankly the world. But when we met Sheryl, she was just stepping off the farm with an acoustic guitar, and we were just all big dreamers and didn't know what we couldn't do.
And did you? So you were then trying your best to promote Sheryl and the others without any training?
This is not a joke. They had bought furniture from an elementary school. So I sat in a chair that was meant for my 6-year-old self, never mind my 20-plus-year-old self. Not a joke. And they dropped a phone book in front of me. I kid you not. That's what we had. There was no internets. There was no cell phone.
Right.
I had a phone book. But again, the think of it now, the great of it is we really had no idea what we couldn't do or frankly who we shouldn't call. And before I knew it, we had booked Sheryl a gig in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And which again was an amazing coup. This was a New England folk singer at the time. And I didn't know that I shouldn't call Robert Hilburn at the Los Angeles Times, who was arguably the most preeminent music critic in the entire country. And Robert Hilburn said yes, came out that night. And to this day, I'm not sure this is a word, but I use it. It was the most acclamatious, meaning full of acclaim, review I have ever seen on any artist ever. The next day, we wake up to the review and we wake up to our phone ringing off the hook. Hollywood, not a joke, came a calling. And basically when they took her, they took me.
Wow. And that was the power, too, of the newspaper back then. That
1,000%.
Right?
Yeah.
Everyone, and music reviews, film reviews, certain iconic writers, the power of that.
One review.
Wow.
Changed the course. Yeah. Not just for her, but for me as well.
So then did you then start taking her around Los Angeles or around the country?
We did. Well, both. We signed with a label in Los Angeles, and I packed my CRX.
Yeah.
with clothes and the stereo. 2 essentials, baby. 2 essentials. Drove across the country and began work at, this is funny, if anybody has the America Greatest Hits album, on the back, there's artwork that features Crossroads of the World.
Yes.
And it is a famed
Sunset
place.
Boulevard, correct?
You've got it. And a giant tower with a globe spinning around on a boat, on the bow of a boat. And I worked in the boat. So it was a funny place to find myself, again, having looked at the back of that album for as long as I did. I began promoting Sheryl and a bunch of other people. And then fatefully, there was a young artist from Young and the Restless called Michael Damian. And somebody played me the song Rock On. It was a re-recording. They're like, hey, do you think? And I flipped. I'm like, get me that now. And before you knew it, having worked Sheryl, Michael entered in as well. And we were off together to a #1 record, the first of both our careers.
Wow. And how long were you there for at that promotion? At that
Cypress
company?
Records was a couple of years, and then Cypress forged a deal with A&M Records, which, again, was an amazing thing for me because when I went through my record collection, it was all A&M.
Sure.
From Carole King to Squeeze to The Police.
Right.
These were all the giant figures for me. And A&M was just around the corner from Cypress, featured on what had been Charlie Chaplin's.
Right. Charlie
Studio.
Chaplin's studio.
So yeah, the first time walking there was, again, where am I? How
And
did
it
I
had that
get
like
here?
English Tudor look.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Astounding place.
Yeah.
And there was a secret, here's a great little story. There was a secret little vault built into a wall on the external of one of the soundstage buildings. And I'd asked somebody, when you first opened it, what did you find? They found a pair of Chaplin's, the Tramp shoes,
Really?
dusty shoes, which
Wow.
they gave back to the family, I believe. But how amazing is that? So, yeah.
I remember when you first started there and we did a little tour. And am I right to remember, was Sheri O'Terry the comedian? Wasn't she your assistant at that time?
Pretty amazing. She was one of the assistants in promotion, who typed a lot all day. You look over and Cheri was typing furiously. We're like, wow, this is a workhorse. What we found is that she was writing scripts all day. And the absolute amazing is there was a couch in that office space. And at the end of the day, an unknown Will Smith, and many of that team that came up with
Will
her.
Farrell.
Will Farrell, sorry. Will Farrell would come over. They were just starting the Groundlings, and they would perform the skits before they went on that night. And it's funny, I talked to Cheri the other day, and there are two skits that I remember that have never been done that she's like, I need to bring those back. One of the most incredible fecund writers, not to use the big word, but just productive writer that you've ever met, and talk about a kid with a dream who made it happen.
I remember we went to see them, and again, it was Will Farrell and it was Cheri, and we saw them in the Groundlings, and they were just starting out, and fabulous, super talent. Now you were the We Are the World. That happened before you got there.
Just before I got there. Yep.
So that
but Studio A, Studio A, which is still an unbelievable place with, by the way, the thing to note there that they don't bring up in the special is it has still one of the only 3 Neve boards in all of the world. So yeah, it's a very famous soundboard that is sought after, but that is that space is hallowed ground, but also that board that they record on is incredible
and historical. Let's talk about some of the talent at when you were at A&M, and can you also talk about working with, and if you had any interactions with Herb Alpert and his partner? Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to work for A&M?
All great questions. We could be here for hours. The encapsulation being, can you imagine the first time you meet Herb? I think I genuflected, which is embarrassing. But thankfully, a real friendship emerged because he's just as pure a human being as can be. The astounding of Herb is that we'd get there very early in the morning. Herb would as well, and he would be practicing his scales.
Wow.
So you would hear Herb Alpert trumpet in the morning, almost like taps in the morning, right? That's what we woke up to when we got to the lot, which is an astounding thing. And obviously the incredible Jerry Moss, who was the M in A&M.
Yeah.
And they had obviously built this extraordinary musical Camelot. There is no label like it, nor has there ever been since, frankly, because Herb and Jerry were truly there for the artists.
Right.
Yeah, there was a sense of business.
Right.
I had someone tell me one time, basically at the top of the year, the head of sales and Herb and Jerry would square off on a table, and they'd say, how much are we going to make this year? So the head of sales would arbitrarily write a number, slide it over. They'd look at it. Off we'd go. If we missed that number, Herb and Jerry just wrote a check to cover it.
Wow.
You won't find people in business like that ever again. And so, again, by the time I had gotten there, yes, the police had exploded and We Are the World had broken. But I was walking on the lot one day, Car pulls up, and it's Sting. I hadn't met Sting yet.
My favorite.
So walked up, here we go, popping the collar. Sting, I'm Scotty Finck. I'm here to promote you. And he looked at me, and now I understand Sting humor.
Mm-hmm.
Looked at me from the side, and he goes, yeah, I really need promoting. Right, we went along famously. By the way, we did some of my best stories and greatest fun is on the road with Sting. He is an unbelievable Englishman, an unbelievable gentleman, and one of the great artists of our time, and just a normal dude when you get to know him.
Yeah, I remember we were at you had invited me to Spago's, and there was like a promotion party with Sting, and his son was a gangly
Joe.
Yeah, at that time he was like a gangly 12 or 13-year-old. Now he's playing with him as part of the tours that he does. And I watched that. But I remember it was funny because people were saying, hi, I'm Tom Smith from WPRO. I'm this person. I go, I'm Steve Feinberg, simply an American. He started laughing. But now, that was pretty neat because also during that Sting launching of with Dream of the Blue Turtles, I think that was his launching. There was also the videos or the documentary feature made of
Bring on the Night.
Bring on the Night. Were you involved in any of that aspect?
I mean, obviously that was happening as I was coming in, and so good Sting story. Take Sting to a radio station, have an interview. And then back in the day, they had to take us to a different place to record liners, basically little promos. Hi, this is Sting. You're listening to Pro FM. And so back to this little broom closet we go with a big reel-to-reel. And the kid that's taking us back couldn't be more terrified. And so, trying to be disarming and put everybody at ease. And Sting knows at that point, Sting is Sting.
Right.
But again, beautiful.
He lights up a room. The guy lights up a
room.
So
that's it. We all tuck in. He tucks in behind the mic. And the poor kid's hand is shaking furiously as he's trying to thread the tape in the spool. And so Sting and I are seeing it. So Sting and I get to talking. And I said, by the way, Sting, like in all the years, is there any one object that you've come into possession of that like just means the world to you? And he said, that's amazing you bring that up. When we go back to the venue, I'll take out a letter from Carl Perkins.
Really?
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. Which again, and I got to believe he still carries in his leather satchel to this day, prized possession. And on that cue, Sting begins to sing Blue Suede Shoes into the mic. Wow. And within seconds, he is full Carl. He's full Elvis. This is going on while I am side-eyeing this kid whose hand is still trembling. And I'm literally like, now, record. Sting, a cappella, full Blue Suede Shoes.
Wow.
And at the very second that he completes his last note, this kid had finally gotten the thread in and pushes record. Doing the head explosion. And I literally like, one more time. Yeah. And he's like, and by the way, and Sting again with that wink and that wit, just looks at it, he goes, missed it.
Right.
I've begged him ever since. Poor kid somewhere went into insurance after that.
Right. Now, you are also working with Sheryl Crow and kind of launching her career, right?
Sheryl is an amazing story in that Sheryl had been around the lot, as we termed the A&M lot. She had been around the lot for years. We knew there was a story there. We hadn't heard anything. So here's a little bit of a story that hasn't been told. Ultimately, we all get served up a cassette. And so again, years in the making, we get a cassette of Sheryl music, and we're all asked generally to give some notes. And what we found is that we gave notes that unwittingly, Sheryl was giving as well, which was this was not the record she wanted to make. So the astounding of A&M at the time, again, it's all about serving the artist and the artist's vision. We all agreed in the room to scrap an entire album.
Wow.
So this is an album of Sheryl Crow that had never been heard. A little bit of Pat Benatar, a little bit of Lita Ford, people she loved, but it wasn't exactly what she wanted to do. Artists pursue a thing or asked to pursue a thing. And we just all agreed it wasn't the thing. So we said, what else you got? And she said, well, I'm involved in this Tuesday night music club for music fans out there. That should be resonating. And playing with a number of performers, including this duo called David and David. You might remember David and David released an amazing A&M record that had Welcome to the Boomtown on it, David Bearwald and David Ricketts. And some other amazing musicians were like, hey, we'd love to hear that. Well, before we knew it, we had several big hits, and Sheryl Crow, having really struggled for over a decade, because again, she had sung backup for Michael Jackson at one point. She had been writing songs, but again, we hadn't put anything out. And at one point, I went to pick her up at her apartment. She had this amazing apartment and a bunch of Hammond B3 organs all around. And we're walking by her bedroom, a couple of mattresses on the floor. Very simple, very humble. So you see that bed? She goes, I didn't get out of it for a year. Because at some point, right, you're just wondering if the dream is ever going to come true. So,
Depressed.
The people we mentioned so far, Cheri and Sheryl, and even Sting, will all tell you there's a decade in there of working, struggling, hoping, dreaming. And that, by the way, is still true of a Miley Cyrus. That's true of anybody that we're working with today. There's a decade in there that none of us see. And, as we joke, it's an overnight success, 10 years in the making.
Right. And what was the big hit that came out of there? Santa Monica.
All I want to do.
All I want to do is have some fun, right? Or
Yep.
Right, Santa Monica Boulevard and all that other good stuff. So how long were you at A&M Records for?
A decade.
A decade. And
Yep.
and who are some of the other artists from A&M?
Janet Jackson,
Well,
who I loved, who was this soft-speaking, just very, very kind person.
yeah.
Oh,
You also represented at the height of Sarah Brightman at the height of her career.
Sarah Brightman was there through Polygram. So it's an amazing breadth of artistry. But Bryan Adams.
Bryan Adams. How was
Right?
he? How was Bryan Adams to work with?
Worked his butt off, toured like crazy. So, he's, there's people who are rock stars when they step on stage, and then there's people who are rock stars all day. He's a rock star all day.
Yeah.
And then Aaron Neville, who I absolutely love, who again is this giant of a figure with, a voice from the angels.
Right. Well, let me ask you something. During that time, and the music industry's changed, so during that time, you're going around to all of the top radio stations, right? And you're giving out at that time CDs and all kinds of stuff, and you're traveling the entire country. Or tell us a little bit about what your job was in actual practical terms.
Got it. So quickly, the process is obviously, begins with the artist. It's all them at the end of the day, right? And to get what's here and what's here on that page, that cathartic process. And as I came to learn, when their truth is our truth, that's a hit song, right? Their truth is speaking our truth. That's what connects. I'm
going to interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
Do you think you're pretty darn good at picking out a hit?
It's a funny story to that.
Go ahead.
which I'm not proud of.
Go ahead.
But I was asked about a certain song one day. I go, that's the worst Everly Brothers I've ever heard in my life. No way. When it hit #1 on Billboard, I said, should I pack the things now? Now, thank God there have been more times where I did believe. And it's funny, there's a former president of a label, and I asked him, what did you learn doing that job? And he said very profoundly, you have to be the first to believe. If you don't believe, no one else believes. So again, beginning with that artist who believes, that's the whole beginning of the process. Then yes, one of us, or hopefully many of us, begin to believe. But then the irony of that is, as we would set out to radio, I'm daring to tell you, on any hit record that I can recall, maybe there were 1, 2, 3, handful on the luckiest of tracks where we found people to believe as we did. More often than not, and it's not anybody's fault, more often than not, they're like, yeah, it's good. Now remember, we're approaching people who are getting 100 records a week. Right. So you get a little numb to the process. It's hard to pick that diamond in the rough. It's hard to find that needle in the haystack. But God bless those people who are visionaries, who on any given record I can point to and say, wow, Pro FM believed before anyone did. And that was, by the way, often the case. Great programmers having traveled through there. Yeah. So yeah, that's the game. But once that song is written, once that song is recorded, once we get an album, often it was our job to work and pick what the singles were going to be. So to your question, yeah, then you're sweating bullets, because it's great when you're right. It's terrible when you're wrong. We believe with all our hearts. The amazing thing of this, Steve, and you know this, we've talked about this. Yep. The great of this job, and the great of this job still, is that I have the capacity still to fall in love with a song, fall in love with an artist, believe that they'll change the world, because they do mine all the time. That thing is such a visceral thing for me. And by the way, the hundreds like me that do this job as well. And what you learn is your role ultimately is to be an artist advocate, because it's a hard enough job writing, and it's a hard job performing, that ultimately someone has to go out there and go, no, Sheryl Crow, she's going to be something. Right.
Now, let me ask you this. When you are, let's say you have 8 songs, 10 songs for an album, does the artist think, or does the artist know what they believe is their hit song, or are they just so vulnerable and they don't know, or is it a group think? How does that work?
See, now you're getting me moving. Now the jazz hands start going. Okay. Because there are, before me, there are so many famous stories. Our former president managed Prince, rest his soul. Prince did not want to release Little Red Corvette. Really? Bruce Springsteen did not want to release Hungry Heart. So it took others to lean in and go, no, this is a smash. Without putting any of our artists on the spot, I have had more than one time where someone would say, hey, you're going to have to get on the phone with, because they don't want to release their hit song. And it has happened. Like they don't want to release it at all on their album? They think it's a reject. Had moved on. Oh, I'm sorry. Say. They think it's a reject, and they won't even put it on their album, or they don't want to promote it as the hit song, so to speak, the commercial. They either don't hear it as a hit, and we do, and this is where a bit of the label function comes in. By the way, sometimes we don't hear it, and the artist is like, nope, this is the one. So you really never know who's going to have that ultimate vision. And then, by the way, it's the audience who has the ultimate say. Right. So I remember us deciding. I remember hearing an interview with Sting when he was talking about Every Breath You Take, and how it was really about stalking, and it was kind of a dark, it's a dark song. Sinister. But never imagined it was going to connect like it did, and people thought of it as a love song. Incredible. I mean, there's a lot of babies in the world, thanks to that song about stalking. Right.
But so there have been songs that you have said to the artist, "This is a hit. Let it." What do you say to that artist? Let it go, or let us have it, or what's your conversation there?
Because you've got two people basically go, well, I believe this. Well, I believe this. And what I realized, and the way we're ultimately able to make that appeal, is that I said, well, you wrote this song, right? You picked this song to record. You chose to record that song. There must have been something that you felt. And again, to what I was saying earlier, when this truth and this truth get on a page, and I can see that truth and realize it's my truth, or it's my mother's truth, or it's my sister's truth, that's how I explain to them, you have to understand your truth is all of our truths. I guess the story that I can share, because she does, is a song called Give Your Heart a Break by an artist named Demi Lovato. And Demi had recorded Give Your Heart a Break very early in the process. And a lot very profoundly had happened to her since she had recorded it. So it was really kind of just, something that by the time we got to releasing the album was her past. And a past she didn't necessarily want to go back to. And so literally, there was many a deep conversation. And true story, she had left our meeting and went out to the parking lot at Disney, and it just dawned on me what I really had to say. And I ran after her, somewhat terrifying her. And I'm old man out of breath. And that was it. I just made that plea and appeal to say, it's the truth. It's the truth in that song. Your truth is my truth, and it's everybody's truth. And by no means was I the one to convince her or the only one to convince her. But that is the depth of exchange that goes into just picking the single, never mind the work that comes after that. Because you asked about, do you then go see America? We do laps around America. Once we've done it once, we do it twice. Then all of a sudden, by the way, great example, Give Your Heart a Break. We saw nothing on that record for about 29, 30 weeks.
Wow.
That's a long time to believe in the process. And then one day, didn't expect it, our salesperson said, hey, whatever it is you guys are doing, and what we were doing was jazz fingering and tap dancing and doing everything to keep this record on the air. And it just shows you what it is to get America's attention. All of a sudden, that truth started to speak, and we started to connect. And literally in these weeks, running up to the 36th week on that record is when we hit number one.
Wow.
And so we go to give a plaque to Demi, and she looks at her manager and she says, good thing we picked this one, huh, Phil?
That's awesome.
So fair, true story. But by the way, again, not a hit unless she wrote that song, unless her vocals, her unbelievable story to tell, and all the brilliant work she put in to make it a hit.
Yeah. Are you, when you're going out and promoting, is it a lot of FaceTime with record radio stations, or what's that process like? I might have interrupted on that. How you go about your daily approach? Phone calls,
very
in
much
person?
so. Sorry, you're going to ask one more time?
Phone calls, emails, in person.
We are, again, you learn in this role, your value is an artist advocate. And it takes a lot of convincing. I mean, I wish a great hit song was enough. But when you're facing, again, 100 records a year, or now the world is, you have 100,000 a day loading onto Spotify. Unimaginable, right? To try to be that little 3-minute message that's heard through the universe. So it takes a great commitment from the artist. I have a saying, we need to campaign with the candidate. So remember, for many of the artists that we start, no one knows them. And to some degree, no one cares. They've got a million other artists happening at the time. So an unknown Miley Cyrus very much has to get on a plane just like the rest of us. And we go town to town, from Providence to LA, Spokane to Miami, big and small. And it is tireless. And many of these stars are really some of the most indefatigable, not to use the big word, but indefatigable people you've ever met. Because again, they've worked that hard already just to get to the label contract, not understanding there's all this work to come. Right. I remember one of our young stars, we had made it to the big show. We had a show at the Forum. But again, we had started nowhere. And her mom looked at me and said, quite seriously, if I had known, this is the mother saying, if I had known how hard this was going to be, I never would have let her do this. But she loved it so much. And that her was Hilary Duff.
Wow. Well, Scotty, what I would love to do, because we have so much more to talk about, is to continue this conversation for an episode next week. Will you stick around?
I'm with you. Can't get rid of me.
All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for this first part of our interview with Scot Finck on Double Feature. And we're going to come back for another episode of our conversation with the highly talented, esteemed pal of mine, Scot Finck.